How's that?
Me. I don't know. Say something.
Me.
It sounds more like it's like you have your face like up to the mic kind of or something. You know what I mean? It's like really kind of.
That better?
Yeah, it's a little better. You're still kind of loud, but it's all right. You were like really like loud, like.
Well, I'll just try to
Feedback-ish kind of, not feedback, but you know what I mean, like.
I'll try to use my indoor voice.
Oh man, listen to that. Sexual Chocolate.
Baby. What was that? What was that from?
Sexual Chocolate?
Chocolate, baby.
That was from Coming to America with Eddie Murphy, although...
There's a song that has that.
What's that?
There's a song that says that.
Well, you're probably thinking of the band. He like did a Rick James-like character in that movie. And that was the name of the band, Sexual Chocolate. Sexual Chocolate, ladies and gentlemen. Give it up for Sexual Chocolate.
I almost want to say
a big, gigantic black wrestler named Mark Henry who went by that name for a while in the 90s.
I almost want to say there was like a metal band that did that. Like an 80s metal.
So, though, but... So you didn't listen to Revenant yet? Or Rigor Mortis or Resurrection?
No, but I'll probably get around to it. See, I think I have high functioning oppositional defiance. That makes sense.
So you just don't want to listen to those, is what you're telling me.
I don't want to listen to something that I'm supposed to listen to. Does that make sense?
Well, I sent them to you because I thought you would like them, not because I'm
I will.
Waiting for you to talk about it on the show, although it would make for great content instead of just going over blabbermouth.
Like but I think this thing is that and here's where, like, you know, that's one of the psychological things. Like someone, like there could be like the band of like all my favorite musicians, and they could write an album like for me. It'll be like every song is dedicated to Marc. Every song we wrote on this album is, you know, is designed around his what notes he wants to hear, everything. And I'll buy the album and I'll be about ready to just like hit play. And then someone will be like, dude, you got to hear that album that those guys wrote. I'll be like, the fuck I am. And I'll never listen to it. It's like,
Jesus Christ.
That's right. And then, and I think like, it's just weird. Like, I think music is like, and it's that way where like when I used to do, you know, and it's not that bad, but like when I do like album reviews or something, there's just something about like, oh, I love this album. I just hate the fact that I have to like even think about it. You know, I'm not enjoying it because I have to write about it now. You know what I mean? Like,
when I did reviews for the Slug, the Salt Lake Underground, I felt that way about a lot of music, and I had a hard time listening to like anything new by its bands. I didn't know.
Because you're sort of required to, and you're just like, eh.
Yeah, I know, but it was death metal and stuff, but and it wasn't anything they made me do. It was just stuff I chose, but I just didn't get into it. There was so much crap. There was nothing good at that time, and metalcore and screamo was really big, but I took delight in listening to some of the stuff that I ended up not liking, and I just like wrote reviews on that because I just destroyed it.
Yeah, and I'm not the type that will, you know, destroy. I don't think I've ever destroyed a band.
Well, there's one where I tore it apart pretty good, and there's other stuff where I was just kind of like, what the hell are they doing? I don't like this. This isn't their usual stuff. But there's one band called Beecher from the UK. Beecher, Beecher. To me, that reminds me of Beech Nut, like the gum, like the old Chiclets gum.
Yeah.
And it's a British band, and they were on Earache. And at that time, Earache was putting out like some death metal, but lots of just like screamo and other stuff. And they had another band called Linnea 77 that was like rap rock. So they had a lot of strange shit coming out. And this band Beecher, I got a promo because this is where I had the Abyss, the store.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like that, and then it's a screamo. It was just run of the mill, random. I'm like, this is shit. What the fuck's Erik doing releasing this? I just like destroyed it, and it's online, like on the slugmag.com website. My reviews are still there under the butcher's block. And then there was other stuff that I reviewed that I gave a good review to because it was stuff I traded CDs for and got in the store that I wanted to sell. And I didn't necessarily like it so much, but it was pretty good. It was okay, but I gave it a little more of a fluffy review than I normally would have because I was like, come buy this shit at my store. So yeah. I use my position of influence as a sales launching pad. I feel ashamed.
Well, and that's kind of like, in a way, it's, when I think about Earache releasing that album, I mean, they're trying to just stay in business. So they're like, okay, this style of music seems to be taking off a little bit. Let's dip our toes into this particular genre, whether it was a good move or not. That
they probably
remains to be seen.
They probably did do that because I think they learned their lesson with black metal. As we discussed before, they avoided black metal because they had met Emperor and Burzum, and it didn't work out so well because Emperor were being stoic and dark and not talking very much because that was the thing in Norway, and then Burzum was, of course, like trying to promote like the hate angle because Satanism wasn't the thing anymore. So he was talking about a lot of Nazi gibberish, so that put Earache off the black metal. So they missed the entire black metal movement, and they didn't realize not all bands were like that. It was mainly just Burzum that said that shit. But
yeah, Burzum.
They kind of like regretted missing the whole boat on black metal because there were tons of good bands that they could have worked with.
Yeah,
because they almost had Burzum and Emperor on Earache. That would have been huge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know, like Burzum, like I don't think anybody would touch them with a 10-foot record contract these days, right?
Probably not. I don't know. It's hard to say because I don't. That's really strange too if you think about it, because black metal was always kind of like that. There have always been black metal bands that were NS, National Socialists.
Yeah.
Like kind of racist and.
It kind of is. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it is. There were a lot of other bands, like Graveland was a really popular one from Poland that was pretty notorious, and even they have renounced all of that. And Emperor and Mayhem both kind of flirted with that stuff for a minute, like just the imagery, but they kind of, realized that their careers would benefit from not being, intertwined with that.
It's a fine line, I guess. It's just the balancing act that every black metal band has to walk, I suppose. Well, with Earache and everything, like I said, that's why it's hard to give bad reviews, and that's the other thing. Another reason why I didn't like giving reviews, because that's where where I try to be as objective as possible. So it'd be like, man, this isn't my thing, but you know what I mean? Like, this is the qualities that maybe if someone was into this style of music would like about this album. Does that make sense? I don't know.
So the quality of your review.
No, so when I do a review, what I end up trying to do is find, whatever's positive about it. Even if I don't like the band, right? I had to kind of like put myself into like, okay, well, what if, how would this be for someone who does like this style of music? Does that make sense?
How would it be for someone who does like this?
Yeah, I try to put myself in the place of someone who likes that style of music, right? So me, like, I don't really care for black metal, right? But if I have to review a black metal band, I'm going to be like, okay, put yourself in and try to imagine, what someone who's into black metal would want to hear. And does this band, do they... do they have those kind of qualities? Because, I mean, I don't care for black metal, but I know why people like it, right? and I know the certain things that they want to hear from black metal. I don't know, dude. I don't know what I'm saying. Fuck
I think
this.
there's a lot of black metal that you might like. Yeah, that's kind of
Oh
one of
yeah, and
I
well
think
there is, but I'm just saying as a whole, I'm sort of ambivalent towards it. You know, like
I'm pretty sure that you would like a lot of the black metal that I hate. Like you would like the symphonic stuff, the really technical stuff, or the proggy stuff, like Emperor. I know you kind of like them.
mm-hmm.
You should listen to Enslaved. Enslaved is black metal from Norway. They're one of the
Oh,
old.
I love Enslaved. Yeah, and like I said, one of my, one band that I really enjoy is Deathspell Omega, because they veer into like avant-garde, but
Enslaved, kind of, they started out just really brutal, like screeching black metal, but it was always Nordic themed. But then later on, they kind of took on like a progressive edge and like a
well,
Pink Floyd kind of edge, kind of, and like Voivodish. It got really weird.
oh yeah, dude, I used to listen to that the Beneath the Lights.
I was gonna
Um,
say Below the Lights, and ironically, that was also one they did on the N Records, which was
yeah,
when N Records was right here in downtown Salt Lake City.
yeah, right by the Grand, what was it? Yeah,
The train station down there.
yes, sir.
According to, I'm looking at BNR metal pages, it says Below the Lights is on Osmos, but I always thought the N Records released that, unless they were just distributing it. I guess maybe that's what it was. But at any rate, then Enslaved was quite progressive, and they seem to have had quite a few albums coming out all the way up to 2021. It looks like so.
Yeah, I think they just put out something recently. I don't even know where I was going with this. Yeah, oh yeah, so it goes back to just, you know, being required to listen to something. And that's the other thing is like I think my musical listening habits are so kind of subject to just whatever whim I'm at the time, right? Does that make sense? Like it's just the one thing I just like what I decide to listen to. I don't force that issue ever. You know, it's like the one thing I just sort of let happen, right? Like, man, maybe I want to listen to nothing but hair metal this day, right?
So you're seasonal with your music, is what you're saying.
No, no. Hold on. It's more than seasonal. It's literally like change. It can change by the hour. You know. Um, it's almost more schizophrenic, maybe. I don't know. Just it's always sort of kind of in a state of flux. So I mean, it never really stays the same. I mean, it stays within certain genres, but it doesn't. But like I said, one day or even half the day would be hair metal. Then I'm just like, okay, I'm sick of this. I need aggressive stuff. So then I'll listen to death metal. Then I'll just be sick of distorted guitar. So I'll be like, okay, let's listen to some R&B. Listen, some '70s funk. Like, oh, okay, that's great. But now my hips hurt from thrusting so hard. You know, then I'll be like, okay, maybe metal. Like, no, that's not doing it for me. Power pop, okay. Hard to find good bands in that, but find some power pop bands. Cool. All right, that's not. I don't even want to hear instruments. Like, so find some kind of like atmospheric trance music. Listen to that. That kind of stuff. I mean, it's not. But I mean, it doesn't usually happen like that many times. In a day or a week, but it's like I just don't force the issues. So a lot of times, if someone's like, "Dude, check out this awesome death metal band," while I'm in my R&B, mode for the day or whatever, I'm just like, no. It wouldn't be fair to that band actually, because my ears are not retuned for it.
But what if it's the other way around? Because I listen to mostly metal and dark ambient all the time, so maybe I'm pretty jaded when I hear stuff, which is why we argue constantly about Cannibal Corpse and Immolation and
Oh, that's I mean, that's another thing. I mean, like I'm still trying to figure out how to approach that stuff with you because it's just like I don't even know like where the baseline is for even kind of exploring that because I was listening to Corpse today and it's just like how can anybody who likes death metal not love pretty much every Cannibal Corpse album? They're so fucking consistent and good at what they do. And it's death metal. It's not rocket science. I mean, I don't know what you want. Like, it's weird to me, you know. Um, and I don't think anybody sounds like Immolation. So when I hear someone say like, "Oh, they're generic death metal," I don't even know what is generic death metal. Like, who would be another example of it? It's death
Another
metal.
example.
It's death metal. I mean, so it's like death metal is going to have certain things that have to be the same with every band, right? For it to be considered death metal. So in a way, like every death metal band is a generic death metal band because they play death metal. So they're going to have certain qualities or share certain qualities across the board on that. Just who's doing it better, I guess, at this point. And when I hear Cannibal Corpse, I hear like thought out riffs, you know, like riffs that get stuck in your head. I'm like, well, that's great, you know. Immolation, I hear like dark, kind of sinister, almost black metal type riffs. So they're borrowing from black metal, if you ask me, or you know, kind of more sinister sounding. In a way, I think there's a little bit of Morbid Angel and Immolation, you know, that sort of sets them apart. But I don't know what a generic death metal band would even sound like. It'd probably just be good death metal to me. Fuck it, I love generic death metal.
Well,
Yeah, see,
that's all generic death metal, though. All American stuff.
what I don't
We're not
see.
going to do this again. What else have you been listening to?
Well, no, you can't just say all American death metal is generic and then go, but bye. No, you know, like that's not fair. I think American death metal is excellent. You know that I don't know. Like I was like kind of like doing some Scott Burns research, and I'm like, this guy's the man, dude. You look at the albums he's done. I'm like, the guy's a legend. Like, what's wrong with making death metal listenable? You know what I mean? Like Scott Burns would have got the you know the what was that first Carcass album, Symphonies of Sickness?
Freak of Putrefaction.
Take a few Putrefaction. He would have been like, no, we're recording this. Somebody spilled coffee on the tapes. Fuck that. We're not releasing this. We're gonna clean it up just a little bit. It'll still be raw. It'll still be aggressive.
No, he
But
quit.
it's not gonna just be fucking painful to listen to. And that's
He
what
would
he
have had
did.
like everything tuned up. He would have had clicking triggered drums. There'd be no heaviness.
What?
Overproduced. A lot of
No,
wanky
dude.
solos. Fuck that.
See, I don't think you know. Like, it almost makes me like, have you actually listened to like Florida death metal? Like, I know you're familiar with it. I don't.
Of
Once
course, I'm
again, it's like
so
overproduced. Like, what?
confident. It all sounds the same because it comes out of Morris sound.
It doesn't though. Like,
Now,
I
if you
don't.
want some good American death metal, Cyanide, Paralysis, Autopsy, Sadistic Intent. There you go.
Uh,
Even though their stuff
sure,
sounds the same a lot, but
sure.
Axon,
They're good, yeah. But
Absu, if you consider them death metal, they're not really quite death metal, but
I don't know. Like, I mean, I guess that's where like I think you're going for some like you're listening for some kind of like
for death metal, and that's what I don't
no,
get.
you're going for atmospherics, and I'm going for I
No,
guess.
no, not atmospheric, because then like when you
Oh,
go to Morton sound, everything is so gutted and tuned down or tuned up and cleaned up that it's so processed sounding. It's just artificial. It all sounds the same. There's no heaviness to it. There's no aggression. There's no uniqueness. It's all just like sounds the same the way he thinks it should
You
sound.
could put
It
the
sounds
Scott.
like Player, like tuned down slightly,
Jesus Christ.
or Exodus.
Yeah, I don't. I guess maybe we should move. Like, I don't even know where to start. I mean, you could just randomly grab two Scott Burns albums, and they won't sound at all alike. There might be.
Suffocation, Effigy of the Forgotten, and Napalm Death, Harmony Corruption. Exact same sounds.
You think so?
Totally different bands. He makes everything sound identical.
No. No.
And you know what? All the bands in Europe had this issue back in the 80s. The thrash bands like Creator, Celtic Frost, they were doing all this heavy stuff going with these old men producers in Germany who are used to doing like German polka barrel music and shit. They're like, oh, what's this? You can't have that sounding like that. We have to clean this up. And they're like, no, no. I think that's where a lot of the stress came from Celtic Frost when they were recording Into the Pandemonium and their other previous stuff too. It's actually in Tom's book. You'll have to read that book. Someday we got to meet in person. I got to give you that book to read because it talks a lot about the studios too.
So are you saying that Morbid Angel records sound like every other death metal band? Because they recorded at Morrisound. Scott Burns, but they recorded
depends on
that.
what album we're talking about. Because if it's Gateways and all that stuff, then yeah, it sounds just like everybody else. That's again makes my point, like you've been making over the past few shows.
Holy shit! It doesn't make any.
Here's a weird one for you: is Terrorizer, which is another Earache band, featuring David Vincent and what's his name on the drums? Pete Sandoval. They're in that band with Jesse Pintado, who is future Napalm Death guitarist. He wasn't in there yet at the time, but he was in Terrorizer. That sounds really crazy. It's a great grinding thrash album, and then Scott Burns produced it, but that was one of the first earlier ones he did before all that other death metal came up.
Yeah.
And I think that's because Terrorizer sounds a little bit more like a thrash band because the vocal style and the guitars weren't so tuned down. But then you had Suffocation, all those bands tuning down really low and like the low vocals. So he was kind of like probably like my dad faced with producing a death metal record. He's like, what's this? You can't have that. Turn that up. You can't hear what this guy's saying. Make that guitar cleaner. That's just too noisy. Put triggers on those drums so we can hear him hitting the kick drum. And
like I said, yeah, he figured out how to make it fucking listenable and not sound like
listenable for people who the death metal, not listenable for real death metal fans. God damn you, Marc.
Death metal fan? Ah, dude, you're insane. Like, honestly, you could literally grab two random Scott Burns albums, and I'll listen to Napalm Death and Effigy. I will do that. That's more like science. Like, that's fucking lab work for me. So I don't even have to figure it really as listening for pleasure. And I know it's gonna sound different. I think Scott Burns actually just tried to create something where everybody in the band is heard, but still sounds like them, But yeah, the guy's a legend, dude. And I honestly, I think, death metal wouldn't even be where it is today without him.
It'd probably be better.
It probably wouldn't exist because people are tired of listening to mud recorded in a cave.
He didn't even listen to death metal before that. He probably likes like country and shit. So he is from
Florida. He was probably that's probably it.
What are you recording on tonight? Because you really don't sound that great. You sound like like that.
Well, we said don't sound like Scott Burns recorded it. You should think I sound awesome because I sound like shit right now. Yeah, I'm true fucking death metal.
Oh, touche. Wow.
I'm running through a boss metal zone right now.
Picking up one for the Burns, man. Wow.
I just sound like generic talk.
I was listening to some of our older shows, and like you need to there were some things we were going to do that we never did. Like we kind of just are getting on and meandering right now. But some of the earlier stuff we had like pointed things we were doing, like listening to Morbid Angels albums, and I was going to listen to Heartwork, which I kind of never did. And so we ought to do that. Like go back and like have actual stuff to talk about, because this Florida thing, I mean, it's just me bitching about music basically. So
yeah, and that's and that I think that's a problem here, because I kind of like have this idea of like, man, it'd be cool to talk to Scott Burns, you know, because he's such a fucking icon. It'd be cool to talk to Suffocation, Immolation. But I'm like, okay, we just, you know, called you guys generic. And you know what I mean? Like I guess, you know, I don't like using the term open-minded, but I feel like I'm more open about like a lot, you know, open to more of, maybe it's because I kind of got into death metal late in the game. I wasn't emotionally invested in a certain scene, right? Like I don't give a fuck about European death metal versus American death metal. I'm just like, okay, what's punching me the hardest? And it's, I got to admit, man, it's the American death metal for the most part. You know, because it does have that. They did figure out you can't play that fast without triggers on your drums. There's very few people. Sandoval might be one of the first that was able to sort of do it, but he probably had to use some. They did some kind of re-triggering of his drums as well. You know, because it just you loses the power once, you know. So I don't think triggers are a bad thing. I don't think being able to hear every instrument is a bad thing, you know. It's a good thing. It makes it more powerful, if you ask me. Maybe it doesn't make it as evil sounding. I don't know. It still sounds pretty evil to me, but whatever.
clearly you're out of your mind.
Yes, clearly. Suffocation, like I hear so many bands that like I hear their influence so much, you know, in the scene. So like the idea of calling Suffocation generic is like insane to me. I'm like, what the fuck? So many bands are borrowed from them, you know. But maybe have just a little more of a focus.
Well, I've been saying that for a while, but I gave you those albums. That's why I want you to listen to them so we can talk about it, but you never listened to them. So, but there's other stuff too. Like we wanted to
Yeah, I mean,
review the new Decapitated. I was supposed to listen to Heartwork.
yeah, I'm gonna bring you a book next week too, by the way. I'm gonna be dropping something off at your work next week sometime.
Well, coordinate with me so I can bring you some of those books. I finished the KK Downing book. It's actually really good. I think you should read it.
Megadeth has a new album out. You know, stuff I've heard from is really good. I mean, it's no Scott Burns, but Manowar recruits Michelangelo Battio for their tour. You remember him?
I
You
don't
remember
know.
the hair metal band Nitro?
Nitro.
Yeah, the guy had like the guitar with like 4 necks.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, he's in Manowar now. Never really done much of listening to Manowar.
You what?
Actually, never listened to a lot of Manowar.
Me either.
Yeah, maybe we should. We're gonna be a metal show. I mean, there really is nothing. There's nothing more metal than Manowar, is there? Really, when you think about it.
I don't
I mean,
know.
Triumph of Steel. You
Is that a
know,
Manowar album?
yes, it is. And they dress like Conan and talk, and they sing about metal.
Where's Manowar from? They're from USA, aren't they?
Yeah, they're New York, I think. East Coast, baby. Manowar. And yeah, they're. I don't know what it is about the East Coast. There was like a time where that there was kind of a power metal thing um, going on. So you had like Manowar, Virgin Steel, and I think Riot was East Coast. Yeah, they're New Yorkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they wear like loincloths. I don't know if they do it so much now. I mean, they started in like 1980, so they probably aren't as they probably don't look as good in a loincloth as they used to, but man, they were pretty yeah, they look like a bunch of Sumerians who worship Crom. Oh, they don't. Nobody worships Crom. He's a cold, heartless god. He gives you a fighting spirit, not much else.
They went from Atlantic Records to Nuclear Blast.
Yeah. And I don't think Scott Burns has gone near him, so you might like him.
I'm glad you're so offended that I don't like Scott Burns.
I'm not. I'm more confused, honestly. Way more
Usually, if I
confused.
bring this up, you're the one who groans and wants to get off the topic. Now, why are you so stuck on it tonight?
Well, I don't. No, I never grown. Want to get off the topic. I want to like figure it out. Like, what's the gripe, man? Like, what are you hearing that's so bad about it? Like, I mean, to me, like, if anything, like some of those early Scott Burns things are still a little too almost a little too raw sounding. Like, but they were, like I said, like they were figuring it out, like kind of learning how to do that on, as they went.
Well,
And
yeah,
then
he has the magic touch of debrutalizing death metal,
debrutalizing. All right. I mean, I guess, yeah, we can move on because I don't think I'll be able to reach. I don't think I'll reach you. So
Hey, I was listening to death metal for years and years before he came into the thing. And when he did, that's when all the death metal bands, a lot that I knew about,
all of them, yes, every single one.
suddenly started to not having quite the sound that they had before. So,
Yeah, you could actually hear their fucking instruments.
yeah, and you keep saying that, but that makes my argument for me is
Is
you're
it?
that American mentality where you want to have crystal clarity. That's not really what it was all
I want
about. It was
crystal
about
clarity, but I don't want it to sound like I don't want
so
fucking
much so
mud.
he took it down that it's
But
just
dude,
it's
I don't
not the
even
same.
know like crystal clarity. Like, have you heard some of the guitar sounds on like, dude, on Tomb of the Mutilated or whatever? They're almost out of control, their guitar sounds. Like they're just barely, keeping it together, but yeah, he tightened it up a little bit. That's not bad. Tight makes, dude, to me that made it sound heavier. Like you taking tunes like Left Hand Path and you put it aside, you know, side by side. Let's think of like kind of a different band than Corpse, like Monstrosities, Fatal Millennium. That's a cleanly produced album, but that one punches harder to me than Left Hand Path. Like I like Left Hand Path. It's it's uh it's heavy as shit. But if I want that real, just like almost makes me feel violent, like really aggressive, it has to be kind of tight sounding to me. When it's not, it sounds more lumbering and kind of, you know, like I mean, yeah, I mean, but I guess it's just Sonics, dude. If you want like grimy, that kind of thing, filthy, grimy, that's fine. I want more kind of punchy and kick you in the nuts kind of thing, you know.
Let's see here. It says here Jim Morris produced the first Monstrosity album. Would that be the person who Morris Sound is named after?
Yeah,
So he's
that's.
not Scott Burns. Who's Jim Morris?
Well, I think Scott Burns produced the second Monstrosity album, the one I was talking about, which was the Fatal Millennium.
Millennium. There's a few Monstrosity records I heard that I don't mind. It's for what it is. It has that approach, the American style, that is actually pretty appealing.
Oh,
and there are times I get into it. It's just Cannibal Corpse just doesn't really do it. They're just everything's like jugular, go for the jugular, like super fast, like heavy brutal riff right away, and the lyrics are just over the top and just silly, and it's not
the
my
lyrics are silly. I don't, but who gives a shit about lyrics, you know, in that style of music? But one thing I love about Cannibal Corpse is that, yeah, they have that fast thing, but almost every song of theirs has like a sort of twist where it kind of gets into like this groove that's not like 200 miles an hour, and and almost every song has it, and it's a memorable riff. Like, I can't believe they can come up with so many just like stick in your head riffs for death metal, you know, with something that's so chaotic in the first place. For them to be able to sort of just pull it back almost and just like bludgeon you with like just kind of this cool, almost, I don't know, swaggery kind of riff. But I mean, that's, and they perfect it as their albums go on. So like the most recent albums are some of the best death metal out there, I think. You know, I mean, Evisceration Plague has so many fucking grooves on it. Like, it's amazing. And their song "Skewered from Ear to Eye" reminds me, like, it's probably one of my favorite Cannibal songs. It's just got this pummeling, just kind of groove, but it's actually kind of swings. And I was always, every time I listen to it, I'm like, this reminds me of something. And it actually sounds like I think almost like the progression is like this. I think you could probably play it side by side with Dave Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk, which is like, I don't know if you know Brubeck, but he's like an old kind of a jazz guy from the 50s. But yeah, it's amazing. That's all I can say.
You know what's funny about this is one of the first 2 or 3 shows we did, I somehow didn't notice it in my file, and I didn't put it on my phone to listen to. And so for all these months, I was like, where are those other shows? I know we talked about this, and I looked back in there and I found them, put them on my phone. And today, on the way to work, I was listening to you say the exact same thing you just said about Skewered from Ear to Eye.
I know, I'm obsessed with it.
Brubeck, is that the guy's name?
Yeah, I'm seriously like, I
just said there was a weird blues riff, and like I was just listening to you say this, and now I'm listening to it again.
Okay, live. We'll edit one of those out because, but like I'm literally like kind of like, and I keep meaning to like try to like play them side by side, see if they like fit, like they line up. You know what I mean? In the kind of the progression, because I think they're in the same time signature, and it just seems like they kind of have the same turnaround points. You know, where this riff starts over. I'm like, my God, that's Brubeck. And I wouldn't be surprised because Alex Webster is just like I mean, he's a musical nerd, you know. I mean, he's always studying and, you know, he's very, like, he's a studied musician, you know, like knows theory and all of that, and probably explores a lot of jazz and all of that. I think you have to, and if you're going to be playing death metal for 40 years and still trying to keep it, you know, come up with new material, you probably have to really start exploring other stuff, you know, to integrate into it. What do you think about Erik Rutan joining Cannibal Corpse? You knew that, right?
It's been for a while, hasn't it?
No, just their last album, basically. So maybe 2 years.
I don't know. I don't follow those bands so much, like Hate Eternal and all of those, because I know that's where Erik Rutan is from. He was in Morbid Angel for a while. Hate Eternal is another one of those bands where I think they were really good. I just kind of never really got into them. It's not my style so much, but I tried, and I mean they're a good death metal band. It's just not my branch of death metal. But Roddy is always a great drummer, and in that band, Doug Cerrito was from Suffocation that was in that band, and Erik Rutan, and I know Mike was really friendly with Erik Rutan. He thought that they got along really well. Like, they were talking about, like, if I remember, like doing something like a while ago, not a while ago, but I mean like years ago when Mike was touring. But
It's funny. It's funny that you mentioned Mike today because I was listening to. There's a podcast called Cali Death, which is kind of like almost like the second, maybe like third wave of American death metal. So they're like younger dudes that do this podcast, you know. And they were interviewing Paul Mazurkowitz of Cannibal Corpse today, and one of the dudes on the podcast brought up Mike. What's his last name?
Kimball.
Mike Kimball. Brought him up. He's like, yeah, Mike Kimball, who used to play in Dying Fetus. I guess he had a website. Mike Kimball did, and he tabbed out, like, wrote the tablature to a bunch of Cannibal Corpse tunes.
Oh yeah, he used to do that all the time. He would always
Yeah.
be doing tabs. I remember that.
Yeah. So it was just kind of interesting you brought it up because I heard his name. That's the second time I've heard his name today, and you just don't hear him that often. So, and speaking of Dying Fetus, they just dropped a new track today, and it was really good. I don't know if you like. I have to think that you don't like Dying Fetus because they're groovy, clean sounding death metal.
Well, we talked about this too. I never was really much into them because of that, but there were certain elements I did like they'd have the crazy, just fast, like do 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 do, and they would stop and go like da 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 da, like an acoustic kind of sounding thing, and then back to the taka 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 taka.
Mm-hmm.
So they were interesting, but still, it was still that American death metal style. It wasn't my favorite thing, but of course, I gave it an objective ear once Mike joined because I was like, oh yeah, and I have those CDs that Mike gave me, but the ones he was on, but I'll admit I don't always listen to them, but gotta support.
Yeah, but yeah, they just dropped a new track today. It's called Compulsion for Cruelty. It was a great song. I liked it. So I listened to that today.
Yeah, and how was that? Is it still three
good.
guys?
Yes, it is. I think so. Check the video. I think they have a. I'm trying to think because the guy grew his hair back, so he's not bald anymore.
Who, John?
Yeah. It still looks. Yeah, they're still a trio, dude. I just know the singer had hair in this video.
That's weird. He's been bald for the whole life of the band, pretty much.
Yeah, and all of a sudden it's.
The funny thing here too.
Like, what happened?
I've seen Dying Fetus and Cataclysm so many times live, either with or without Mike, and then Cataclysm also, and they always seem to be touring together. It was just when I lived in Houston and I saw Dying Fetus and Cataclysm together. Like, I've seen them together a couple of times here. Saw them once in Denver when Mike was with them.
There's you kind of get those bands that sort of like they just kind of have a good they probably just have good rapport with each other, they're just like, hey man, we got along. So because I see that a few times, like who's like Nile and Morbid Angel, I think, would tour a lot if I remember. Well, I don't know. I mean, all those Florida Death guys, they kind of, last time I saw Cannibal Corpse was with Obituary, so that makes sense to me.
Do you like Divine Empire?
I'm not terribly familiar with them.
They're another one of those East Coast death metal bands that all those guys have been in, like Derek Roddy, Alex Marquez, all those guys.
It's funny.
They're not quite as well known, but they're like, that's.
I probably will like them, actually. I'll check them out because I listened to kind of I was listening to an interview with a guitar player named Ron Jarzenbeck, and
Was that the guy that was in Halford?
no, that's Bobby. That's his brother, Bobby Jarzenbeck, who's in Halford. He plays drums, but Ron Jarzenbeck plays guitar. And he was in a band called Watchtower, like a technical thrash band, back in the '80s. But he like kind of recently, uh, started kind of branching into more like extreme metal, but instrumental. So it's like hyper technical, but heavy as hell. And he tapped Derek Roddy to record on the album, but he ended up like not moving. Like he ended up like not working with Derek Roddy because I don't know if you know his nickname is One Take Roddy. Derek One Take Roddy, I think. Like literally everything he does is in one take. And he doesn't ever punch in or anything like that. But the music that Ron Jarzenbeck was making is so technical. It has so many separate parts that he had to like he needed a drummer that was willing to like stop in the playing in the middle of the song, right? So he could maybe change something. But Derek Roddy just refused to do it. He just had to play the song all the way through, no matter what. Every fucking time. So Ron Jarvisville, I just couldn't work with that. So I thought that was amusing. That was a fun little story. But yeah, that guy's an amazing drummer. But I'll listen to some Divine Empire. That sounds like it's up my alley. If it's that classic, I like generic American death metal. What can I say?
I don't know what you can say.
I guess I'm just vanilla ice cream of death metal.
That's you. Do you like Skinless? That's another big Dying Fetus bro touring band.
Skinless is alright. Like I remember listening to him and liking it. I don't remember being like kind of bowled over, but I don't think it's their fault. Like it's one of those things where maybe like my headspace wasn't into it. Or it might have been a little too like I almost thought they sounded obituary-ish or something. They sounded a little bit more like kind of like what you would like kind of slightly muddy maybe. Like the whole mix has been covered by a wet sleeping bag. But I could be wrong. Like I might be way off base. But I'm willing to admit that. See?
Oh, I see. So what's really at the core of this here?
Oh, nothing.
Little
I don't
sharp
listen to
comment.
core.
I could admit that. What? Huh?
That's the only thing I don't do anything with I don't fuck with core. Anything with core, and maybe that's another thing that's like I gotta maybe get over. Because like anytime something comes across as like metalcore or deathcore, I'm just like, well, I'm out. I don't even want to. I don't know why. Maybe that's wrong of me too. I just don't like if you throw core on the end of something, that's a way to get me to not listen to it. I don't know why.
Arcus.
So that's kind of my yeah, grindcore, right? But I knew Carcass before they were like I thought they were a death metal band, so I could still listen to Carcass because I'm like, oh, they're death metal. But it was hard for me like anytime someone's like, oh, you like grindcore, I'm like, I don't know, probably not, because there's the core at the end of it. Hardcore, emo core, screamo core.
You're acting just the way that you
I know.
ascribe.
No, I'm totally being a closed-minded like JR. You're like, but yeah, like you put a core at the end. But listen, I mean, am I wrong? Like when it comes to deathcore or metalcore, what do you think of that stuff? Huh?
What?
What do you think of deathcore?
What is deathcore? Is that like the
I don't know.
screamo stuff?
I I have no idea. Like I can't. I won't listen. Like anytime something comes across my radar and it's described as deathcore, I'm like, no, not gonna listen to it. It might be stuff like Ingested. I don't know, or is that Slam? Like I don't care for Slam just because I don't like that kind of where it's like the speakers actually sort of start fuzzing out. You're like, that doesn't do it for me. But I think it shares. I think it's kind of like Slam, isn't it?
I don't know. To my knowledge, deathcore was always another term for like screamo or something, but really the term goes further back than that. But to me, I don't know. There's a band called Deathcore from Germany, and they were just like basically a hardcore punk band but fast. So it's like a DRI thing.
Oh, here it is. Wiki describes deathcore as an extreme metal subgenre that combines death metal with, wait for it, metalcore. So I guess we got to figure out what metalcore is now. So I'm going to click on metalcore.
Well,
Metalcore
screamo
is a fusion music genre that combines elements of extreme metal and hardcore punk. Well, what's hardcore punk? So I'm going to click on hardcore punk. Hardcore punk, also known as hardcore, is a punk rock music genre and subculture that originated in the late 1970s. It is generally faster, harder, and more aggressive than other forms of punk. Its roots can be traced to early punk scenes in San Francisco and Southern California. So what's Southern California? Since the mid-1970s, California has had a thriving regional punk rock. What's punk rock? Punk rock, also known as simply punk, is a music genre that emerged in the mid-70s, rooted in 1960s garage rock. Well, what's garage rock? Garage rock, sometimes called garage punk or 60s punk, is a raw and energetic style of rock and roll. What's rock and roll? Rock and roll, often written as rock and roll, rock and roll, or rock and roll, is a genre of popular music that evolved in the United States during the late 40s. It originated from African American music such as jazz, rhythm and blues, boogie woogie, gospel, and country music. There we go. The history of deathcore.
according to the internet, at least.
According to Wiki. Like, dude, I just followed the breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs. I don't know. It all just seems so pointless, man. Music. Well, what's the point?
Wow.
Just sounds, just noise. It's all noise, man. I think you know what? I think I'm gonna not really be into music. I think I'm growing out of it. It was just a phase I was going through. I think I'm gonna get into photography.
Well, isn't that nice?
Fuck music. Oh, too many subgenres. We need to start over with music.
We need to start over with this episode.
No shit.
So, has new albums out this year.
Who has new albums? Cannibal Corpse. That might have been 2021, though. Violence Unimagined. And that's the first one with Erik Rutan. So what has just come out recently? Well, I mean, I can tell you what's come out recently. Like today, as far as albums. So the new Megadeth is out. I don't know if you're a fan or not. King's X just dropped their first full-length album in a long time. I don't know if you were a fan of them. Probably not. Psychroptic has a new one. They're a tech metal band from Australia.
Scorpions.
They have a new one out?
Yeah, according to this, yeah. Rock Believer.
Rock Believer.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of good stuff looking at. The new Ghost. I mean,
Dude, I'll be honest, man. I don't think I've heard a single.
Immolation, Acts of God.
Yeah. Maybe we should review that one. Maybe you should. I don't know. Like,
Right,
I don't want to force someone to listen to something they don't want to listen to.
Well, that's the thing.
I already established I don't like being told.
I'm going on stuff that I've heard like years and years ago. So maybe it's time I will listen to the new Immolation and the Carcass Heartwork, since I listened to the new Carcass and I liked it. So let's do that. What's the new Immolation called?
No, listen to Swan Song. You're gonna like Heartwork. I already know that.
Well, I will admit, partly I've been being obstinate just because they changed their grindcore roots, and I had that little tiff with Jeff Walker when they were here touring for Heartwork. But what's Swan Song? I can probably go through that and see. You listen to those 3 I sent you. I didn't send you those just for kicks. I think you'll like them. That's why I sent them to you.
I will listen to those 3.
I'm certain that you'll like those. They're American death metal, 2 of them. 2 different kinds. One's a very Morris sound kind of one. I'm not even sure if they recorded their Resurrection. They may have, but Revenant is like a lot older, like a Morbid Angel kind of style. But they're not a Morris sound band as far as I know. But so why don't we do that? And then I've got a lot of like info that I've read in KK Downing's book that we can go over next time, because you really sound like crap too. Like this, whatever you're using, it's not very clear.
Oh, cool.
Well, I'm just saying, what are you using? Are you just talking into a mic on your laptop or what?
No, I've just got like different headphones. They're more like earbuds versus like the over-the-ear kind of thing that I usually use.
Yeah, those ones aren't very good because you're like really like you're kind of muffled but like kind of loud. Yeah, what's the word for that? What's the technical?
Swedish death metal.
No.
I mean, I don't know how else to describe it.
Well, your voice is loud, and there's a little bit of like kind of not distortion, but it's just like not clear. Like it's kind of muddy and like loud, but it's.
Oh, so it's like true Norwegian black metal.
Yeah. Just for that, the show after this next one, you're gonna have to listen to some black metal. In fact, that's not a bad idea because, like I said, there is some black metal I think you would like.
Okay, did you already put it in the Dropbox, or is?
Well, I have not yet because so far you haven't listened to those ones I've sent you. So if I keep sending you stuff, you're just not going to listen to it. So that's why I haven't done it. But
Dropbox. Okay.
You even just admitted that to me earlier on this call. So.
Resurrection. Some of the members used to be in Solstice of Resurrection. I'm just looking them up.
I don't know.
Solstice is Rob Barrett's band from Cannibal Corpse.
Well, probably not on their first album, but that's the one I sent you. I don't know if Resurrection ever did another album, but.
Oh wait, I got the Resurrection Band, also known as Res Band, was a Christian rock band formed in 1972. They were part of the Jesus People USA Christian community in Chicago. Obviously, that's a different band. Okay. Bombed Existence. Is it the one you sent me?
Yes, that's Resurrection.
Yeah. Let's see. Lineup. Wow. 2 of their members died.
2 of them died. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so David Scott, who was the bass player, died in 2014. And John Asty, who's one of the guitar players, died last year. That sucks, man.
Well, there you go. Listen to that, and then we'll have a little homage to them next show, and you can tell us how good you think the record is, because I think that you like.
Yeah, I'm going to like this already. I know I am. Recorded November 1992 at Morris Sound. It doesn't say who produced it. It says co-produced by Resurrection. So I'm assuming it was probably either Jim Morris or Scott Burns. All right, I'll listen to that for sure. Because I know I'm going to like it.
And I know that you like Revenant probably, Rigor Mortis, maybe not. I just sent you that because we were talking about Ministry and how it's kind of the same guys. But Rigor...
I don't like Ministry. Well, dude, I don't know if I'll ever really like industrial.
Well, Rigor Mortis is not industrial. I'm just saying it's also the same guys as Gwar.
You know, isn't it kind of weird though? Like, when someone like you almost like, okay, so the guy from Rigor Mortis joins Ministry. I'm like, well, what were you doing in Rigor Mortis? Like, you almost feel betrayed. Like when Larry Lalonde, joins Primus after playing on Possessed, 7 churches, and you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck? Like, there's part of me that's just like, oh, you traitor, you know. And it wouldn't bother me so much if he would actually always, would nod to his past a little bit more. But that always bugged me about Larry Lalonde when he joined. He forms Primus with Les Claypool, and neither of them talk about their former bands, like hardly ever. Like Larry Lalonde wasn't like, yeah, man, I was in Possessed, dude. It's badass, dude. Like kind of one of the first sort of kind of proto.
So in the 80s, he was probably trying to keep that image away because on their band photos, they were all like black fingernails, spitting blood, upside down crosses, all that kind of shit.
Yeah, yeah, and then they're all like flannel, like it kind of was like, I mean, they weren't grunge like Primus, but they were kind of like, oh, look how alt we are. And then, but Primus was in a band called Blind Illusion, which was like a Bay Area sort of progressive thrash band.
Yeah, that was the album Larry and Les did together after Possessed broke up, and then it became Primus, basically.
I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a.
I had that record and I didn't like it mostly because number one, it wasn't like a thrash record. I kind of thought it wasn't, but I got it like hoping it would be because it was the same guy, Larry Lalonde. And then I didn't like Les Claypool's vocals because they were so nasally. I'm like, okay, that's kind of not doing it for me, so I got rid of it.
Like Larry Lalonde could like literally like come full circle and rejoin Possessed. I think that'd be badass. No, he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't.
Yes, he did. They did a new album not too long ago.
Yeah, but Larry Lalonde's not on it.
He is. He played with them.
Hold on.
Why do you doubt me?
Did he play on that album, or did they just like join him on stage or something?
He didn't join them on stage. He was in Possessed for a while.
Well, he was in Possessed like early days.
Yes, but he rejoined Possessed recently, and then they put out a new album and toured. And I know this because one of the bands on my label, who were on my label, Savage Deity, opened for Possessed.
So, okay, listen, dude. Pull up the Possessed.
Or maybe he wasn't on the new album. I thought he was, but I know he was playing with them. They got back together and he played.
No, he hasn't played in Possessed since '87. So okay, I was right. I just need to.
So I don't think this is right because I think Jeff was in Possessed too still. Because right now there's nobody in Possessed according to this on BNR Metal pages that's even was in the original band, like none. But I can clearly hear Jeff's vocals.
Jeff Beecher is still in there, but everybody else, like he's like the only real original member.
Yeah, I know he's in it too, but I know that Larry Lalonde got back in Possessed and like they were at least playing shows or what, something.
Nope.
He was.
I mean, I think you're thinking of Daniel Gonzalez, who's
no.
joined 2011. Dude,
Larry was playing with Possessed. I know he was.
No.
Yep.
It's okay to be wrong, man. It's okay.
Well, then I'm glad you said that because you're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Okay, so next week, first things first, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to listen to New Immolation, so can you. I'll listen to Heartwork and Swan Song.
Or Swan Song. You don't have to listen to both.
I'll do both, but you listen to those other ones I sent you.
Yeah.
You don't have to do Rigor Mortis, but I sent you that because I think you'll like it also because it's the same guys as Gwar, who are also the same guys as Ministry. It is not industrial. It's thrash.
All right.
Listen to Resurrection, and we can have a little tip of the hat to those guys who are dead now. And then I think you'll really like that record because even I like that one. It's pretty good. And then we'll go from there, and I can talk also about KK's book and Rob's. I started reading Rob's, and I've also been on this like complete Judas Priest like revival. I cannot stop listening to Judas Priest right now.
Good.
It's crazy. It's weird. I get on band kicks for a while, but this one is just not going away. So,
Good, man.
and I got a new bike for my birthday, and I started riding it. And for some reason, all I want to listen to when I ride is Judas Priest. And I'm noticing that the songs, especially since KK mentioned it in his book, that they do have a lot of fast songs. I never really quite paid attention to it.
Oh
But
yeah.
they have a lot of fast songs, like "Eat Me Alive" and like
Free Will
I Come
Burning,
In, like
Screaming for
all their
Vengeance.
Free Will Burning, you know, all that stuff is just, it's really good. I've always liked Priest, but I've
That's
kind of underrated them. It's just kind of old heavy metal. Like I'm just rediscovering them. It's just, God, I cannot stop. I can't get enough.
they were the real deal, man.
And that's another thing. Well, why don't we do that? Have you heard the newest Judas Priest album? Because I have not.
Firepower? Yeah, I've heard it. It's pretty good. I think Andy Sneap did a really great job.
I'm going to listen to that one too, and then we'll have a couple of shows.
Andy Sneap is the new Scott Burns, if you ask me. You can kind of tell when he's
So you made him sound like pussies?
No, there's just an Andy Sneap sound, you know.
Okay. Well, I'll listen to the new Judas Priest as well.
You edit that out, dude, just in case I ever get a hold of Scott Burns.
Oh, I'll tell Scott Burns a thing or two.
No, you won't. Better by you? Better than me?
Wow. I like what you did there.
Yeah, man.
A little tip of that Priest, even though it's not an original Priest, but it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it's a good song. Yeah, they kind of got in that weird thing, like, let's do Joan Baez songs. Whatever.
Diamonds and Rust? No, not that one.
Green Monolith.
So I gotta bring, that's Fleetwood Mac. I gotta bring you, I'll bring you the KK book and the Tom Warrior book.
Okay, and I'm gonna bring you a surprise.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, dude.
Do you want a death metal book? I can lend you these books and you can take your time reading. I've read them all. So I have a death metal book too called The Birth or the. Have you read Choosing Death? It's about the beginning of grindcore and death metal.
I have not.
You might like that because, of course, it covers the entire Florida spectrum and Napalm Death Carcass, all that. Brutal Truth, Dan Lilker. It's a pretty good book. It has all the big stars in there you'd expect. Or do you want to wait on that one?
I'll wait on that one.
All right, I'll bring you KK Downing and Tom Warrior.
Sounds good.
KK's book is a pretty quick read. I was really into it. He's like actually a really down-to-earth, cool guy, and I've always liked him. But even more so after this book, I think he got a raw deal with Priest.
Do you know what his real name is?
Ken.
Yeah, it's funny because I used to work with a girl whose mom dated him for a second when she lived in Arizona.
What was her name?
I can't remember. I can't remember this girl's name. I had a crush on her, but she was like a rock climber. So she had these like beautiful like toned like arms and calves and everything. But she also had like just these like man hands, like with calluses on them, and like it was kind of a turnoff. But anyways, that was years.
Well, you know, she is British probably, so.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't British. This girl.
Oh, she was one of his American things, huh?
Yeah, it was when he lived in. I guess he lived in Arizona for a while.
I don't think he did.
Yeah.
He didn't mention it in the book. I know Rob did.
Oh, wait, or did Glenn? Maybe she was talking about Glenn, but she
might have been Glenn. I don't know.
I don't know. Dude, she could have just been full of shit too. So I guess
there's also that. A lot of girls are full of shit when it comes to who
yeah,
I did rock stars.
That's kind of a weird story to make up, though, right? Like you're kind of like a younger girl. Oh yeah, my mom used to date Glenn Tipton or KK Downing.
Oh, you never know. Well, some people might get it wrong too. Like at the family wedding thing yesterday, the dinner, the groom was telling me how he knew a guy whose son was the Ultimate Warrior's son out of wrestling. I'm like, Ultimate Warrior didn't have a son. He's like, oh no, I swear it was. Like, you're wrong. I'm like, no, I'm telling you, dude. I know wrestling. Ultimate Warrior did not procreate. I'm telling you. He's like, I'll show you a picture. He shows me a picture. It's a totally different wrestler. I said, that's one of the guys from the Road Warriors, not the Ultimate Warrior. But they both wore makeup, so I see why you got confused. But anyway, on that note,
Yeah.
so do that. You listen to those records I sent you, and I will listen to all this stuff, and then I'll get you those books, and we'll meet this week, and then we'll do this again Friday or Saturday, and hopefully you won't be in such a hateful mood, you bastards.
Hateful.
Yeah,
All right.
you like licked me sideways 9 ways to Sunday, telling me what a piece of shit I am for not liking Scott Burns tonight, man. I gotta
Yeah.
go.
Oh yeah. And I'll tell you again if I have to.
And I'll tell you again if I have to that how wrong you are.
All right. Well.
On the other hand, like give me some credit as I'm being open-minded. I'm being nice to some of these bands. I'm listening to some of this shit and I'm liking some of it, and other stuff I'm gonna go back and retread what I said. I'll even listen to Cannibal Corpse and Immolation. I know that most of it's just me being me.
Like I would never force anything on you. Like
it's not that, but I'm just saying, like I think I'm being argumentative because that's just who I am. I'm set in my ways, but I'm also open-minded enough to do it. But
whatever. You know, or like
a
radio station lingo where they listen to a section of your show or whatever. I can't remember what it's called.
Review?
Yeah, there's a term for it, some kind of. All right, and I get that because, like, if I was unfiltered, I'd probably have that about a lot of bands. Like, all right, dude, I'm gonna.
All right,
brother. Okay.
All right. Oh, hold on a second. Stop.